Remember how you loved the stories at bedtime about princesses and fairy godmothers? Well, you may want to hold on tighter to your teddy bear and keep that nightlight on, because these are not your mother's bedtime stories.
Hello.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Not Your Mother's Bedtime Story. Everyone is here. Colleen is here.
Hi, it's Chrissy.
Sherry's here.
And so's Mom. Karen.
So happy middle of March. We have two special guests joining us, and we're living the dream in March. Are watching March Madness, and just finished our corned beef and cabbage dinner a couple days late. It seems like no perfect brackets left.
Nope, they're all trash.
Nope.
No.
I don't think you could have predicted that. Purdue upset, so I don't know.
Yeah.
No.
They're all in the toilet. Well, at least probably everybody's is in the toilet, so.
Even Lainey's axolotl bracket.
Oh, I think she was in last place. Kane was in first place. I don't know how he's doing now. I haven't checked him, but
I think Stacy might have moved up, but
yeah.
Yeah. See, so it just goes to show, like, you don't have to know anything about basketball, college, or any otherwise to pick a good bracket.
Well, go FDA. Go FDU. I love the underdogs. So I want to welcome Devyn and Amy and their little puppy Bruin, who you might be able to hear in the background. They have a lot of great stories. I'm not going to spend any more time talking. I'll let them take it away.
Okay, I guess I'll start. So everyone went to Florida, basically, except for me, of course. And so my older sister was going to come over and spend a couple nights with me. And I was at work, so she ended up coming here, like, a little before I did. And she... Basically, I get home and she's like, oh, I called Mom because I was scared the ghost was going to bother me. And I was like, oh, haha, like, so funny. There's no ghost in our house. So that first night, it was just the two of us. So we were just hanging out and talking. And we normally hang out in here just because it's like a longer space. So we like to pace and talk. But we ended up sitting in the living room. And my parents' bedroom door is shut, but their bedroom is sat directly above the living room. But obviously nothing had been in there because the door's always shut, and it was shut since they left. But in our middle of our conversation, it almost sounded like someone had fallen off of their bed up there. Like, it was the loudest that I'd ever heard in my entire life. Like, it literally sounded like there was someone up there. And me being me, I just, like, ignored it. And I kept talking as if, like, nothing happened. I was like, oh, cool, whatever. And, like, kept talking. But, of course, it freaked my sister out. And she was like, we're not pretending that didn't happen. Like, you heard that, right? And I was like, yeah, it's fine. That happens all the time. It's just the house. And she was like, Devyn, that's not. She was like, there's definitely someone up there. And so she was, like, freaked out. And we heard, like, little things in the house the rest of the night. Not much. Like, maybe some footsteps or something. Like, nothing major. And I was like, they're just house noises. But she was like, it's a ghost. And then...
So you guys never investigated after you heard the thud? You didn't go to see if, like, something fell down or anything? You just let it go?
Yeah, I just let it go. I was like, I don't know. Maybe something fell in there. I don't know. I was like, I'm not going to go upstairs. But the next day, I was home alone, and my mom called me. So my older sister left the next morning. She has a baby, so she, like, went home to get the baby, and they were coming over later. So I was alone again, and my mom called me to check in, and she was like, so you heard a noise in my room? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, what if it was, like, a squirrel? Can you go make sure there's, like, no animal in my room? And I was like, Mom, there's no way that was a squirrel. Like, if you heard that, that was, like, a whole person. Like, that'd be one big squirrel. And I was like, it sounds like there's, like, someone in the house. up until that point, I hadn't thought about it, but the whole time they'd been gone. So the whole time up until that point, it had sounded like someone was like walking around in their room the whole time I was alone. I don't know. I just didn't think anything of it. I was just like, okay, cool. So she was like, well, go upstairs and figure out if there's something up there. And I was like, you choose? I was like, oh, I was just gonna wait till you and Dad like got home and like let you guys go in there and figure it out, just in case there's someone here. But she was like, no, go upstairs. So I went in there and there was nothing. Nothing fell. Everything was normal, completely fine. So I moved on with my day, and my sister came back over, and she brought her wife and my niece. And so we brought down all of her toys, and she has, I guess it's like an interactive table. You know, you like pull things and it plays music and that kind of thing. It was like later in the night, probably like 10 o'clock. The baby was already asleep. We were playing games, and I got up to go to the pantry to get a snack. And my sister was like, Devyn, did you turn that on? And I was like, turn what on? Like, I'm over here like, girl, what are you talking about? And she was like, Raiden's toy, did you just turn that on? And I was like, no, why? And I came out of the pantry, and it was like all lit up, and it was singing the ABCs. And she was like, no, Devyn, you need to like stop playing with me right now. You need to tell me the truth. Did you turn that on or not? And I was like, no, why would I turn that on? Right before I walked by, our dog likes to follow me like everywhere. So I was like, oh, like the dog's tail probably bumped something. So we like moved everything on the toy, trying to figure out if like something was like easily triggered and to rule out that it was the dog, but it wasn't. And while we were pressing all the buttons, nothing played the ABCs. None of the buttons, none of the things we pulled, nothing. And we went through the whole table 4 or 5 times, and the song never played once. And we were like, well, that's weird. Like, that's really weird. So then we like acknowledged the fact that it didn't have the song on it. Dana was there, and we were like, it doesn't have the ABCs on the toy. You don't think this is weird? And she doesn't believe that stuff. So, of course, me being me, I was like, well, you know what? I'm going to prove it. So I went over and I moved one of the toys, and I started playing the ABCs. But only after we had mentioned that it didn't have that song on it did it play the ABCs. But the whole time before that, it never played it once. So it was kind of weird. And then they all went to bed, and I heard the same thing my mom had because I was alone. It was dark, and it sounded like someone was trying to talk to me, but I couldn't like really make out what they were saying. Like it was like they were like over here in this corner area. They it sounded like they were standing there, just like trying to have a conversation with me or like talking in the room. And I was just like, I don't know, I just ignored it. I was like, whatever. I'm like alone. I'm too tired for this.
So was it like muffled voices, or like could you distinctly hear like what they were saying?
It sounds like a bad connection, if that makes sense. Have you ever been on the telephone and you're trying really hard to hear somebody and you know they're talking to you and you can kind of make out what they're trying to say, but they're not coming through? That's exactly what I heard, and I think that's what you heard.
Yeah, I like at this moment and like afterwards, I couldn't. Like, I can't remember what they were saying. I could just remember very clearly. I could hear a voice. But in the moment, I could, like, kind of make out what they were trying to say, if that makes sense. So, like my mom said, it's kind of like the voice is just coming through slightly, but not good enough that I could really make out what they were saying. And so I just went down to go to bed. And I heard it again. And I was like, can you please just stop talking to me? I'm tired. I want to go to bed. And then it stopped, and I never heard it again. But instead, it was almost like since it couldn't bother me, it decided to bother the dogs. So, like, the dogs would get up and start barking at nothing. Like, they would get off the couch and follow something, or they get off and they would bark at a wall. I was like, literally, like, leave them alone. Like, I'm trying to sleep. And then it was like 4 a.m. And the dogs came like jumping off and came into the kitchen, and they started barking. But like it wasn't like a nice bark. Like it was aggressive, like kind of angry bark. And I was like, that's kind of weird. But it was 4, and my sister had mentioned that the baby sometimes wakes up around then. So I thought, like, she came downstairs to make her bottle. And so I just laid there listening to see if I heard footsteps leave the kitchen or someone tell the dogs to be quiet, but no one did. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll take care of myself. And I, like, told them to be quiet and come back. And then I couldn't sleep, of course, because then I was convinced there was someone in my house. So then I, like, went in the kitchen, and there was absolutely nothing. So it was basically just, like, 2 nights of, like, random talks and noises and things playing. But that was basically the whole experience.
Sounds like somebody's trying to tell you something.
Yeah.
There's a slight backstory to the older sister being terrified of the ghost. You notice she said she was afraid to come here alone. She lived with us for a little while when she was much older. So she was up she had the room up in the attic. And one of our sons was down in the basement. Ryan had a French project to do for high school. So he had gone down in our basement to film this French video. And apparently when he got done with the video and had it up in his bedroom and was kind of like editing it out, there's this disembodied voice going, Ryan. And we've heard it. I tried to get it for you today. Of course, his video is not working on Facebook, so I can't play it for you. But he actually has a recording of it sounds like a child's voice, very faintly. In the midst of him, he never heard it with his naked ears. He only found it when he was doing the video. And so Casey, we were in bed, so he's in his room scared to death. So the minute Casey got home that night, he was running out into the hallway going, Casey, we've got a ghost, and I've recorded, come hear this voice. So this is why Casey's afraid of the house anyway, because she's heard this video of the voice actually talking to her. It's not a ghost that stays here. It comes and goes all the time. I've heard, and I don't even know what exactly it is. I've heard babies crying. My son has seen a young boy standing in his doorway. We've all experienced something.
You saw the man with the top hat too, remember?
Man with a top hat. I've woken up to a woman with a hood standing in my room. We've had multiple experiences. I don't know what the connection of any of it could possibly be. The house across the street from us is a really old farmhouse. And the land that we sit on, when they were building our house, they filled in an old well, like an old dug well that kind of runs between our house and the house next door. The house next door also gets random activity. So I think it's kind of floating between the two. It's nothing that harms us. It's just like a trickster. It did it to me today. I was running around trying to get ready for her birthday dinner. And I've been sleeping down in the living room with the puppy. The whole joke is I sleep with a sound machine. So I like the waves going. Well, one of the sounds is like this weird, like Chinese music. I don't know what the music is. Like you'd hear in like a spa or something. And it just randomly, I was in the kitchen getting food ready, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, that sound starts blaring. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. I didn't set any alarms. Why is this playing? So I went in, I shut it off. I came back in and it started again. And I finally said, oh, for goodness sakes, this is not the day to be irritating me. Knock it off. And it never happened again. It was just enough that I was like, really? You're going to start with me today when I'm like really stressed out? So pretty much if you just tell it to leave you alone, it doesn't really bother you. But
that's really interesting. You answered the questions that I had really about, where it might be coming from, and the fact that if it's from an old farmhouse and they also have activity, like you said, maybe when you guys don't have activity, the farmhouse does, and the ghost is like visiting different areas, or keep a journal and like coincide.
Well, the house next door to us is new too. The farmhouse is actually across the road from us, and there was an old foundation where our house is. So I think that it might have been like servant quarters, slave quarters. There's a question about slave quarters too. I'm not sure what went on way back when. That is a really old house. So I've heard rumors about like it helping escape slaves, so there's definitely some sort of historical piece with this property, and that's where I think it probably comes from. But it's a multitude of spirits. It's not just one, because obviously we've seen kids, we've seen adults.
I woke up to that little boy in like the old army suit or whatever at the foot of my bed one morning too.
And Ryan has seen him standing in his doorway, and I'm wondering if that's the voice that's saying Ryan, because it sounds like a child, kind of just sing-songy, like Ryan. but never harmed him. He didn't even know it was there. Like, he was just doing this crazy French video. He's so embarrassed by the video, but he kept it just because it captured that voice. I mean, that's really the only voice we've ever captured. But as far as houses and residual, I was just sharing a story from another house we lived in years ago. Had a lot of activity, and we know the source of that one too. And it did come and go from our house, because the oldest house in Pittsfield actually sat there originally, and they took it down and sold it to a historical society of some sort in Vermont. So they like took it down and took it away. And then our house that we were living in was built on top of the foundation, but they left the original L in the barn to the house. So like, as activity happened again, it would only happen like periodically. It's almost as if they'd come in and then go back out. And even before we moved into the house, we were up there painting, and I just had the sense, some people are more in tune. I definitely knew there was something in the house even before anything actually clued us in. But we were leaving from a night of painting up there, locked the doors, shut all the lights out. I wasn't even down the road far enough that I look in the rearview mirror and all the lights in the house had come back on. So whatever the spirit was in that house had the ability to actually affect the electricity. So this conversation came up because of the puppy, but I had a black lab puppy. Kyle was a baby, and I had a kitten. I was crazy. I know 3 babies all at the same time. So again, I was sleeping in the living room with the puppy so I could get her outside with the baby, because he was nursing, so he had to be there too. My cat just chose to sleep on my head. So we get all settled in on the pull-out bed in the living room, and I get everybody sleeping. The puppy's asleep, the baby's asleep, and I just settle in. And the table across the room from us, there's a chair in front of the fireplace and the table, and it's one of those old lights where you tried to turn the knob and you could hear the clicking sound when it would go on. The light comes on, it clicks on, and I'm looking around. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. You turn the light off right now. I'm too tired to deal with this. And all of a sudden the light goes click and it goes back off. Now I'm laying in bed surrounded by sleeping babies, absolutely terrified, because it actually did what I told it to do. So like, at the moment I was mad, but then I was like, oh my God, it just shut the light off. It actually did what I said. And then when Bob and I started dating, I was still living in the house too. And I woke up one night to this old man kneeling next to my bed with his hands out. I don't know exactly. I don't remember what was in his hand, but Bob was sleeping without a shirt, and he almost lost a nipple because I went flying over him to get away, and woke him up this way, by the way. I'm like, like jumped over top of him to get away from whatever this was. Of course, this is the middle of the night. I'm waking him up like this. And by the time that happened, there was nothing. He didn't see anything. I think he thinks we're all insane, to be quite honest. He's not one that has ever experienced anything. And the kids all had different interactions. So that house was pretty active, but it kind of Ryan's birthday. So it was Ryan's fourth birthday party. And everybody's there. We've got the candles are lit, and he's just a little guy. He's only turning 4, and so he blows the candles out, and then all of a sudden they all light again, and he's still like down in the thing, and it almost got him. And everybody's yelling, and my mother's yelling at me like, "What the hell is wrong with you? You buy a little kid candles that relight?" And I'm like, "Mom, these aren't relighting candles." And the damn things did it 4 times. 4 times for his 4th birthday, and then they stopped. But they weren't the type that were supposed to be relighting. They're just regular candles out of a box. But yeah, so it definitely had the ability to interact a little bit more than I think the one here does. This one hasn't turned any lights on, at least.
Saved me from falling that one time upstairs. So I think it was like over the summer-ish. But I used to work out upstairs. And we have a ski machine. I don't know so I used to do that as like cardio. And I must have lost my balance or something. And I like went to fall backwards, and it felt like someone like fully like put their hand on the center of my back. And like I didn't fall. Like it totally helped me keep my balance. And but I was wearing my AirPods, so I assumed that like someone came upstairs while I was up there and just so happened to like be there when I went to fall. And I turned around and there was no one up there, and it totally freaked me out. And I was like, "That's it, I'm done." And I left the room because it like freaked me out. But I only went up there one other time after that happened, because I was like, being dramatic. And I went up there, and the one other time I go up there, all the lights turned off. So I left again.
So, okay, yeah, I guess this one does interfere with electricity too. It's hard to say, but they're not scary. They're just kind of, I guess we get a little ourselves scared if we analyze it too closely.
Yeah.
Because here she is. We're not here. She's home alone and she's hearing thumps and bumps and she's not even bothered, but someone touches her back and saves her from falling. And
I don't know. Physical touching, when you can feel that, always freaks me out. It's just when you can feel somebody else and then nothing is there, that's kind of a different level.
Yeah,
But at least it's not pushing. It was saving, not pushing. Like, that's the worst, I
Right.
think, when something wants to push you down the stairs or something like that. So I think, yeah, if you've got any activity, it doesn't sound like it wants to hurt you. It just wants to play or
It's
wants
not
to
malicious.
teach you your ABCs or do whatever it wants to do.
Yeah, but
think
that
that-
also means that it was probably like sitting in there watching you work out too. It's
yeah,
like-
that's why she's freaked out now, right?
A little creepy.
it's like, don't worry, I got you.
Yeah. He's like,
Yeah.
oh, I can jump in here.
Yeah,
I got it.
it's like I was waiting for.
Creepy.
You guys are great about. You guys are actually like confront your ghost, like stop it, or enough with the light switch. Or and Devyn, when you were yelling at it with the dogs, it obeys you. It obeys you.
Yeah.
You imagine it's probably like, oh man, it's like, come on, guys, like finally, I just want to play or just want to hang out. They probably like sitting there turning the light on, like, okay, I'm gonna, do some knitting or read my book or whatever. Turn the light off. Oh man.
Well, or childlike, like you said, if you've seen a child, that definitely sounds like a child's like behavior, an obedient
Playful.
child. So a child from like 100 years ago and not, today's child. But yeah, it's an obedient, playful type of an entity.
It somehow knew Ryan's name at one point in time, so that was pretty
Yeah,
interesting.
that's the creepy
Yeah.
part. I don't
Well,
like.
they're
I don't
obviously
like that.
watching. I mean, it's it. They're watching
Right.
Devyn work out. They're, watching, the kids, and
Right.
maybe
Yeah,
if he was,
They're interested.
yeah, they're interested. They're,
but anytime they know your name, that to me is always scary, because you hear that a lot where they will call out, or pretend that there's somebody else in the family. That's even creepier, where they mock, and have like the same voice. And yeah, I don't like it when they know your name. That to me is a little creepier. But
I think that was one of the few experiences Ryan has had. He's always like jealous of half of most. My older son has dreams that come true like us. Casey obviously has interactive. Most of us have some sort of things that happen to us. So Ryan's always wanted to, have the ability to. We go into antique stores and we can tell you pieces that are haunted. We have experiences. The pushing in the back is what made me think of it. There is an antique store in Northwood that we love to go to quite often. The upstairs of that one is now actually the people that own it moved into it and they live up there, which I can't even imagine, because it was really that it had different spirits in it. But that I don't know if it was off a piece of furniture or because it can be just a furniture. But whatever was up there was not nice. It was not a nice spirit. And the owners, I have since found out that the owners that owned it before had someone come in and try to get rid of it multiple times too. But the last time that we were actually upstairs, it was, I tried to ignore it in the past, but it was pretty aggressive. It did feel like it was pushing me in the back and touching. It was worse than most times when you walk into something that's haunted or whatever. You kind of get this feeling. It almost feels hard to breathe. It's kind of almost like a lot of pressure on your chest. You feel like you can't quite breathe right. It's usually our sign that there's something. All the hair on your body stands on end. It's some alert to us that we know something's going on. And so I'm like, God, this is really aggressive today. I can't stay. I really can't stay up here. This is not being kind today. This is like really like interacting with us. Before it would just be we'd sense it, but we kind of avoided it. And so Devyn wrapped her arms. I don't even know if you remember doing this, but she thought, well, she's like, all right, Mom, I'll protect you. So she wrapped her arms around my back, which instantly took it from me. But apparently I went downstairs afterwards and she felt like somebody, and you don't even remember this, isn't that weird? But my sister came down and said, whatever that was, just tried to push Devyn down the stairs. Now, this is still at this antique store. I don't know why you don't remember that because it was pretty, and it was because she had thrown herself like around me as in protection, and then it went at her instead of me. We've seen a ghost in the basement of that antique store. My mother and I both, just a woman, it's some random woman that was walking around. She was harmless. Like the ones that are still there now, I don't sense, I think maybe they actually got rid of the furniture piece because it's two men that live up there together now, and they're able to live up there, so it must be okay. So I've always wondered if it was something they had like set up for, and when they moved up, they obviously emptied it out because there's no way he could stay up there, or either one of them would be able to stay up there for long that I can see. They did try to have a priest come in. They tried multiple things and it hadn't done anything. I don't think it was demonic. I just think it was one of those spirits that wasn't too kind, obviously, because they weren't able to get rid of it.
That's a total occupational hazard to have an antique shop, and then you don't know. You're like, well, it could be any of these items that could have some sort of attachment, and you just have to do like a fire sale and get rid of it all, and hope you get rid of the one that's got the bad spirit attached. I didn't think about that before.
They can come with furniture pieces. My mom has a old men's, I don't know if it's kind of like an armoire. It's got a mirror and a drawer and like a closet door that opens up that she bought. I was with her when she bought it, but when we got it into her room, I'm like, Mom, I just saw a man in the mirror when I looked in the mirror. And she's like, what? I'm like, there's a man in the mirror. It looked back at me, but then it was gone. And their house has a spirit that's not so nice now, too. And I would guarantee you it came through that piece of furniture. They still have it in their bedroom. But yeah, it was really freaky because I don't remember us feeling like that at the antique store where she got it. But when it got into her house, so it could be that it wasn't in the piece of furniture. Maybe that is the spirit in the house. And I saw him reflected in the mirror. I'm not sure. That you've had experiences over at Grammy's house for sure.
Oh, yeah.
They have a place in Machiasport, Maine, so they go up for 6 months out of the year. So we have always helped out with like watering the house plants, or since she can drive, she's been doing it by herself. I took her with me every time I went because I don't want to be in the house by myself. But I've heard that one speak my name. I've been sitting in her living room and thought someone said Amy and looked around, and I'm like, who is calling my name? And they all thought it. And their dogs have, most of us have had an experience in that house. My sister, my niece, she was house sitting and saw some guy standing behind her and reflected in the window at the kitchen sink. So there's definitely a man. So I'm not sure if it came out of that piece or like I said, he just reflected back at that moment. But
he seems to have a thing with like mirrors or reflections or, things like that. I mean, they do say things about mirrors that they can be portals and, so maybe it wasn't the furniture. Maybe he was there the whole time, but maybe there was something about it, but I don't know. I don't know what kind of return policy that antique store has.
I tell you, if I go antiquing, Amy, I'm bringing you with me
You're
before I make any purchases.
We do that all the time. We won't buy things, even if we like it. It's been a symptom. I collect a lot of antique kitchen gadgets. This was just an old flour sifter, and there was a couple of them sitting there. And I don't know which one it was, but I picked it up and all the hair, like I was like, I don't know what piece over here is causing this, but I'm not purchasing anything on this side because I couldn't decipher. I looked at my sister. I'm like, we're not going in this area today. Like, it's so like, we talk about this stuff like it's so normal because we've all had these experiences our entire life, though. We wonder sometimes when we go into these stores if people think we're insane, but honestly, that's how we found out about them trying to exercise the antique store, because we actually mentioned to them, do you know you've got a spirit up and that's not very nice? And they're like, yeah, how do you know? And I'm like, because we've experienced it. And they're like, we've had it exercised twice, so it really wasn't just us. The owners actually knew about it and had experienced it too. So I'm not sure. Like I said, my neighbor here she thought it was her dad because her dad passed away and I guess initially he lived there with her too. So until we had this conversation over drinks one summer, she just thought it was her dad playing tricks on her until she said, as I'm telling the story about how it seems to come and go, and her face is getting like, I'm like, what's the matter? And she goes, all this time I thought it was my dad, but I think it's coming to my house when it leaves your house because, I've had stuff happen or we've seen stuff. So Here, it just kind of wanders through. And the old house across the street is also haunted, the farmhouse. So that has its own ghosts. I think the ones that are traveling here have to do with the property.
Hello, everyone. Sorry to interrupt, but we found that Amy and Devyn had so many good stories. We wanted to split this one up into a two-parter. So this is where we'll end for now, but stay tuned for our next episode to hear more of their crazy tales. So for now, take it away, Mom.
Thank you for listening, and remember to keep that night light on. Good night, sweet dreams.
If you have a story to share, please send it to notyourmothersbedtimestory@gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at notyourmothersbedtimestory. And please help us grow by following us on your favorite podcast platform, leaving us a positive review, and telling a friend. Thank you for your support.